Hello, and welcome to, or welcome back to, Project Apollo, my series on a Kettle seed world. Seed worlds are speculative evolution projects where a planet is seeded with Earth life, which is then left to evolve and diversify in this new context. On planet Apollo, these life forms were cattle, along with a variety of grasses, insects, and other invertebrates. In previous episodes, we've seen the cattle diversify into niches like carnivory and aquatic lifestyles, but they're not all that's been evolving. In the cattle's shadow, insects have been thriving, so let's take an episode to look at the evolution of these environmentally crucial life forms. Before we continue, I'd like to remind you to consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. We're currently at 15,000, so thank you to all my subscribers. Anyway, while you're there, consider smashing that like button and leave a comment. I also asked the comments in the last episode to name the two aquatic species of cattle mentioned. The first, Tauropotamus, translates to river bull. This family has a semi-aquatic lifestyle and is among the first cattle to take to the seas. I'll be calling the second family Neosirenia, or new manatees, and they'll be among the first fully aquatic cattle of Apollo, and will thrive in the Hyacinthus Sea. The family of aquatic Minofelis will be called Neurocepheids, meaning Theseus of the water. Theseus, in Greek mythology, slayed the Minotaur, and fittingly this is a group of aquatic carnivores. Thank you for all your fantastic suggestions, and with that out of the way, let's get back to the video. The humans who terraformed planet Apollo were intending to make essentially a massive cattle ranch. While some cattle can survive on grass alone, most milk-producing cows have a diet that includes other plants. Thus, besides grass, which certainly dominates the surface of the planet, Apollo has major populations of most grass is wind-pollinated, producing massive quantities of pollen in the hopes that some of it gets where it needs to be. But if grass isn't the only plant on Apollo, insect pollinators are also required. Mason bees are a species of solitary bee that don't build nests. Because they don't have a hive to bring pollen back to, they pollinate up to 100 times better than honeybees. If they can pollinate the previously mentioned non-grasses, they might be among the most common species of bee brought to Apollo. Although species like honeybees, leafcutter bees, and bumblebees probably would be present as well. Scavengers and detritivores would also be important, considering the amounts of rotting plants, dung, and corpses. Dung beetles are an obvious choice for cleaning up excrement, but a variety of beetles, millipedes, flies, springtails, pseudoscorpions, snails, and other scavengers and detritivores would also likely be introduced to the planet. Carnivores would be necessary as well to control invertebrate populations. Species like spiders and dragonflies could be introduced. They could also help control populations of any stowaways unintentionally brought to the planet, although that'd be rare considering how well the plankton of Apollo were filtered to avoid fish. But let's say a species of grasshopper made it to the planet by mistake. Perhaps ants, wasps, and termites weren't brought to the planet at all, with every species excluded entirely. There are claims that ants make up 20% of animal biomass, although I'm not sure how true this is, so this could clear up a lot of material. In the first few thousand years, the invertebrate population would absolutely explode. Dung beetles and other detritivores would thrive on cattle dung and corpses, and herbivores like grasshoppers might have swarms regularly numbering in the tens of trillions. Insects live faster lives than cattle and would be able to speciate and diversify far faster than them. They'd quickly be able to fill new niches. And one empty niche on planet Apollo is cattle parasites. Coprophagy is the practice of eating feces. As gross as it sounds, real cattle are already coprophagic to some degree. Especially as their population reaches its maximum size on a diet of grass, cows would doubtless eat dung on Apollo, which could give an easy entry for some invertebrates to become parasitic. Perhaps a species of worm evolves to live in the cattle's guts, stealing food, reproducing, and laying eggs. These eggs get expelled, and coprophagic cows eat them, continuing the cycle. Of course, parasites exist on Earth. Apollo has no small vertebrates, so could invertebrates on Apollo adapt to niches they can't take on Earth thanks to a lack of vertebrate competition? In the Carboniferous period, insects grew to massive sizes. There were dragonflies with wingspans reaching 28 inches at some points of Earth's history. Orthopleura was a millipede that grew to the length of a small car at 2.6 meters. A major part of this was probably higher oxygen concentrations in the atmosphere. Insects lack lungs, breathing with diffusion, which is only effective at small body sizes. But a higher amount of oxygen can allow them to overcome this difficulty. A relative lack of vertebrate competition for a while was probably another factor, with our ancestors only just getting their start on land. At this point, planet Apollo has an atmosphere similar to Earth, limiting the size of its insects. But perhaps some invertebrates can still grow large, albeit with difficulty, thanks to the lack of vertebrates vying for their niche. Perhaps a population of spiders specialized in eating insects can grow over a foot across in the largest species. This size might allow them to hunt cattle, with small calves sometimes being poisoned and dragged away by lucky spiders. Molting would be risky for them, but perhaps they can dig burrows to safely shed their exoskeletons and eat meals. Another food source for these spiders might be the massive numbers of locust-like grasshoppers swarming in Apollo's skies, regularly numbering in the tens of trillions. These grasshoppers would not only compete with the cattle, they'd also become food for insectivorous cattle as well as spiders. As time progresses and cattle can specialize further for insectivory, the grasshoppers would have to adapt strategies to avoid immediately being eaten by the massive numbers of spiders, cattle, and other insectivores. If insectivore populations sustain themselves on a regular diet of grasshoppers, then maybe the constant flow of food can be restricted to avoid predator populations growing too large. Perhaps the most successful lineage of herbivorous swarming grasshoppers spends several years underground. Their young would bide their time burrowing and foraging for subterranean meals, and then emerge en masse in truly breathtaking numbers. They'd shed their skins and prepare their wings, then fill the skies in quantities far too vast for any predators to consume. Thanks for watching. Of course, doubtless other forms would exist on Apollo, but to save on time I covered only a few of the most notable invertebrate adaptations. Countless other species would likely thrive as well. I like the idea of large dragonflies thriving in the niche left by birds. Or perhaps some aquatic shrimp undergo carcinization and evolve large terrestrial forms. If you'd like to see more videos in the near future on invertebrates on Apollo, let me know in the comments. The next episode's probably going to be on megafauna, and I'd appreciate any suggestions you have. I'm certainly no expert on cattle, and input from the community has greatly influenced this project before. If you've watched this far, subscribe for more speculative evolution content, and consider checking out my Patreon. I'd appreciate any support on there if you're in a position to do so, although watching these videos is certainly enough. You can find a link to that in the description. Anyway, thanks for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.